And good evening, everybody. It is time for the show that the cool kids are calling ASTV, the American Scouser TV Thursday Night podcast with the three handsomest blokes in the entire American Scouser universe. Myself, Jamie, and David. Boys, how are we this week?
100%.
For a change, we have nice stuff to talk about this week. We can enjoy it tonight. We don't have to stress about it so much. It's been a good week so far and a good week going ahead. A lot to get through tonight, not in terms of topics, but in terms of the depth that we want to go into the topics, because we have things we can talk about without getting depressed. It would be fantastic. But as always, we're going to start with Jamie's 60-second news.
Is right, Reds. Let's get stuck in. So Xabi Alonso is the new Leverkusen manager. After stints with the Real Madrid youth setup and Real Sociedad B team, he is now following in the footsteps of ex-Red Sami Hyypiä. Today is old spaghetti legs himself, 65th birthday. Happy birthday to the man with the magic P. It is Bruce Grobbelaar's birthday. Happy birthday. Speaking of old men, it's James Milner. James Milner's clocked 300 appearances this week with the Rangers setup, with the Rangers game. So that's 825 appearances in his career. Also, big news coming out of the club today is Liverpool have a new partnership with Extreme Networks. They're a Wi-Fi provider. So that's going to go throughout Anfield. They're going to be offering mobile ticketing services, membership rewards, all sorts of AR and VR immersive services, and a whole host of other great innovative digital experiences. And earlier this week, news for the LFC women is that Expedia are going to be offering free travel to the away games, which is massive. Staying with the LFC women, today, the academy graduate Hannah Silcock has been signed her first pro contract. She's been with the club since she's been like 9 years of age, so fantastic news for her. And also news recently that from various sources that our very own Nabisco Keita, our Nabi lad, will not discuss a new contract with the club until January.
60 seconds. That last bit of news is very interesting indeed. What do you think of that one, David?
I think we'll see, but there's this like kind of feeling like I feel like he might have played his last games for us. I don't know. We'll see, but between him and Ox, I'm not sure who's further away from starting at this point, especially if we change the shape. So,
Jamie, what do you think of the news itself?
I mean, it's been touted around a couple of weeks. We've been talking about this whole Naby Keita situation for a while. And I can't take credit for the Nabisco Keita joke that he's made of biscuits. I read that somewhere on Reddit. I thought it was absolutely priceless. I think, if we don't want to let him go on a free, he has to sign on a new contract. I think he knows that. His agent's obviously going to be trying to get him a good deal, and maybe that's elsewhere. Who knows? But, money plus Keita for Bellingham has been thrown around. I'm not sure if I trust that at all, because we all know what he's worth. He's worth absolutely nothing right now because he can't play for us. So, I mean, the Bellingham deal is upwards of 150 mil, let's just say. What's Naby worth,
$10 and a packet of Toffos.
Well, the other thing that gets me about that one is in the summer he's free. And they're not selling Bellingham until the summer, so they could just still sign Naby Keita and charge us 150 million or whatever it's going to be. So.
Yeah, probably be 200 by that stage.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. I mean, honestly, at this point,
keeps going up every week.
What do we think, though? Because it seems to be a clear FSG policy, or at least a Klopp policy, to let players go or let their value dwindle before we do anything about it. Almost out of a misplaced sense of loyalty sometimes, and not the hard-headed business decisions that, say, by comparison, Alex Ferguson would do, where he would sell star players just before they waned for big bucks and then use that money to buy the next star player before they were the stars. Do you think it's a policy we might need to revisit?
He is loyal to his players, and I don't know if that's going to change. I don't necessarily know if I want it to change. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Fergie was ruthless. I think a certain amount of loyalty has to be given to these players because they buy into the system. They give their all. Naby is a bit of an anomaly. I'm sure he works hard in training and all the rest of it, but it just seems like his head's turned. And it has happened before. We know it's happened with a select few players that we could certainly name. But I think loyalty isn't the issue. I think my issue that seems to be happening a lot recently is we keep getting linked with players that do well against us. Certainly, Nunes has been one, and we're being linked with the kid from Napoli again now. I think our scouting it has been perfect, next to perfect. I just want it to be a step quicker, almost. Before we get to see these guys up against us, I want those wheels turning already. So maybe if the recruitment in is a bit better, then we wouldn't be so worried about the recruitment going out.
David, Jamie just mentioned there, that it seems like Naby Keita's head is being turned. Do you think he's going to suffer an injury from that?
Yes. He's got whiplash. That's why he's out.
But on a serious note, it is something we have to maybe look at. That whole idea that we sign players who played well against us reminds me almost of the Roy Evans, Gerard Houllier start of that era, when if a player had a good game against us, we were linked to them almost. It's not here we really want to go back to, is it?
No.
Moncho, wasn't he at Blackburn before he came to us? Didn't he win the league at Blackburn before? Or was that the year before? I'm not sure. I think he was there in 99.
I don't remember. But yeah, it's not something I want to go back to. Like, we did it with Minamino. That didn't really pan out that well. It did work out in the case of Sadio Mane. I'll give him that one. So, but
well, there's an exception to prove every rule.
Yeah, of course. I think the other one that maybe I think they might have gotten sold much harder on Konate that year that we played Leipzig in this round of 16. I don't know as they were originally thinking of what their timeline on that was, but the center back crisis and then how he played against us, I think they were like, let's just move up on this. So, it can be good and it can be bad, right?
Well, at least with Konate, I mean, he is sheer quality. So we've seen that so far. We just have to hope he's robust enough to last the distance. Whereas I think it'd be fair to say Naby hasn't really shown us what we thought we were going to get at this point, has he?
He's never been YouTube Naby. When you saw those YouTube highlights, weren't you excited about the player we were going to get?
Yeah, and we had to wait for a year, so it was like that's all we had was YouTube highlights and watching the Bundesliga.
It was like asking for and thinking you're going to get a Commodore 64 for Christmas, and then it's an Atari 2600 with one game. Not even a 2600, an Atari XL. For anybody who remembers that, I had one. There was 2 games.
But a good thing about Konate in the news today, he said that Liverpool's a club that he wants to, stay for the rest of his career at. So that's great news to hear.
Just very briefly, let's touch on it because it was the first story. How do we think Xabi will do as a coach? I think we made this point last week. I certainly don't have any love for the excitement we get for top-class ex-professionals becoming coaches. They generally don't tend to be as good in the management arena as they were on the field. Do we think Xabi will be an exception, or will he follow, the same path that Sami Hyypiä followed pretty much?
Yeah, Sami didn't fare too well with Leverkusen, did he? He was there for a few years, and then he went to who did he manage in the Premier League? Doesn't matter. But there's a wealth of...
that tells you what you need to know about it.
Exactly. Sami didn't have a glittering managing career, and he's opening the out east, where he was opening one of the LFC retail stores today. So you could tell where his managerial career went. But Xabi, I do kind of high hopes for because of the caliber of player we're talking about. I think, he's done well with the Real Madrid setup, the youth setup, and Real Sociedad B team. So he has the caliber, like I said, but time will tell, I guess. But it definitely got his work cut out for him at Bayern Leverkusen, because they're in not a particularly great moment right now too.
Dave, just a quick question. You, Jamie can answer this as well. Just who do you think would be the surprise package from the current crop of Liverpool players if we were to name one that goes on to become a fantastically good manager? Who do you think would be the one that would surprise you the most?
Firmino, because I don't know. I just can't picture him being that serious for that long. It's going to be the funnest locker room of all time, but we're probably not going to be very good, to be honest.
What do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, can you imagine being disciplined from Bobby? Big pearly white Firmino, like he just give you a smile and you'd be like, "Yes, boss, yes." A good. I mean, Hendo's the obvious shout. The outside, the outside winner, I would say. I think Robbo could make a good coach. Bobby Lasso.
I would say almost that Firmino, if he was to be the one that made it to the big leagues as a coach, I actually think he would be a completely different manager. You'd almost think like that personality, he'd almost be like Klopp, that personality be what would win you over, but to be like that sort of undercurrent of toughness that we don't know yet, that maybe brings to the game. But I actually think Milner's going to be the one.
Oh, Milner.
Personally, I think he soaks up the game. Like he'll play till he's 50, and then he'll start coaching. and not because he has to retire, he just wants to do something different.
Milner, I think, will make a good coach too, and I think Hendo will too. I think Robbo will become a TV personality, and he's going to be awesome.
He'd be commenting on Celtic games on Celtic TV and getting into trouble because of it.
I like it already.
So let's move on to the positive news for this week. We had a game in the Champions League. It was Liverpool against Rangers, and for me, the stats tell the story that we need. It's the only thing we need to talk about. Is we were pretty much dominant, weren't we, Jamie?
I mean, we really were. If it wasn't for another old man in between the sticks, it could have been much more. Probably should have been if we were a bit more clinical on the night. But the stats can only tell you so much. And for me, I think the gameplay in particular, and obviously the formation tweak, which I'm sure we can talk about, was great to see. I think the front four really gelled well, considering they only had a day on the training pitch. But the stats, like you said, you can pull them back up again. They were fantastic. It was a good game. Attacking, we were well disciplined. And yes, the argument can be there that Rangers were there for the taking and possibly aren't fit for Champions League football. But you have to beat who's in front of you, and we certainly did that. Only issue is we could have made it more, and if it wasn't for your man in nets, he had a great couple of saves. Some of them were right at him, but he still made a great couple of saves. But we could have easily made it more.
David, what do you think was so different about this performance? Because it almost was a complete performance, regardless of how Rangers were. We just looked together for a change, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I go into that, do you know when Alan McGregor made his Rangers debut?
1979.
It was my junior year of high school, so basically. We looked a lot better. I think it really comes down to the way Thiago and Hendo kind of inhabited the middle of the park and allowed Trent kind of more freedom to move up the wing a little bit. And the way the four interacted, like Jamie said, was fantastic. I'm hoping I think we've all heard people say like 4-2-3-1. Let's try that. This is more like a 4-2-4, but I actually really like it. I don't know how much we'll see of it soon, to be honest with you. I think we're probably not going to play it but for maybe like 30 minutes at the weekend, because they tried it last season a little bit and they struggled with it. With like Diaz, Mane, Salah, and Jota, it just didn't really mesh. So we'll see, but I can't. The way I think of it is, I really like to see it more often, just so we don't see more of Trent drifting into the middle and us kind of having the same problems that we've been having, because you really didn't see any of that last night. I thought the center backs had more coverage, so it was just good.
Jamie, we're talking about 4-2-3-1, but Klopp seemed very insistent that it was a 4-4-2, turning into a 6-4. Now, if we look at the average positions, it is pretty much a 6-4. But if we look at it a little bit closer, it's definitely a 4-2-3-1, really, isn't it? It's just a very divided 4-2-3. It was almost like a defensive group and then an attacking group with not much link in them, wasn't it?
Right. And I think, that'll boil down to a few things. The fact that they've only worked on it one day. I think quite rightly, Klopp's entitled to call it a 4-4-2, because we're not going to give Arsenal that much of a clue as to what we're doing. And David's more than likely right. I kind of thought it was going to be a 4-2-4 as well. When in attack, it's more like a 2-4-4. Yeah. But that's the key for me. It's fluid, and that's the thing that kind of struck me. And listen, this is something that we talked about a few years ago on the podcast when, Jota, Mane, and Co were all involved, and it was, can we get all four involved at once? And I think now with Jota being given that kind of freedom and that 10 role, if you want, and having Diaz as the live wire and having Salah do what he wants and let Darwin grow into the game. I think the fluidity of those front four was really impressive, because Darwin was popping up here, popping up there. Absolutely. Daz is spot on. Keep Arsenal guessing, because we can revert to type if need be, and if that 4-3-3 isn't working, we can do a 4-2-4 or 4-2-3-1 or whatever you want to call it. And who knows, if they've only had a day working on the 4-4-2, maybe they'll have a day working on a 2-4-4 like we were talking about. Maybe there'll be a completely different formation we'll be talking about next week.
David, do you think we did definitely look more fluid in attack, but also we didn't seem to lose any. Again, it's Rangers we're talking about as the opposition, but we looked a lot more cohesive at the back. Do you think the newness of it, not to make a pun on their striker's name, but the newness of it all probably helped in that? Or do you think if we stick with it, we can actually make it even better?
I think it's a starting point, right? Like, we may see this evolve and become more and more the thing that he likes and we see more of, but he's not. I don't think he'll go to it that much right away. But like you said, the fluidity of those players, what that allowed Thiago and Henderson to do behind them. I mean, Thiago with fluid movement in front of him is a lethal weapon, but so is Hendo in a lot of ways. And I just think we'll see more of it against opponents where he feels comfortable. Like we've said, this is Rangers, right? So they're barely as good as Bournemouth. So, it was a good time to do it. He's not going to go that route against Arsenal unless we need a goal or we need several goals, or it's just what he wants to shift to naturally as he makes his subs. That's another thing too, is I really think that for the personnel that we have, we've all been saying how we need a midfielder. Or do we? If we go this route, you've kind of got enough bodies on board. So maybe this is how you manage their minutes this year, is playing more of this, especially against opponents where you feel comfortable. It's not going to be Arsenal and Manchester City, but against West Ham, will we see this? Maybe. They're bottom of the table right now.
Trevor says, more than anything, everybody looked comfortable on the pitch and not constantly scrambling. It did seem... we say that there's only one training session, but it seemed like they've been working on it for weeks. They seem to click really instantly with it, Jamie, I think.
Well, I think there's a few things to delve into there. Everybody wanted to prove a point. A a big European night under the lights at Anfield with, not necessarily one of our rivals, but it was a heated European night. Let's just say, the build up to the game. It was the first competitive outing we've had against Rangers. So, there was a point to prove, and obviously, look, they're not doing too well. They done well in Europe last year in the UEFA Cup, or in the Europa League, whatever you want to call it. But got dumped out last minute in the final, and really didn't make a good show of themselves there either. So the time was now to make our statement, and look, the 3-3 at the weekend was a bitter pill to swallow. So for Trent to score in the 5th minute really set the tone. And a couple of set piece goals, the free kick and the penalty. I think I was not critical because, like we said, McGregor was fantastic in nets. A goal from open play would have really sealed the deal for me. But I think there was a point to prove, and we went out there and done it. And like I said before, you have to beat who's in front of you, no matter who they are. So, you have, by all means, respect the 11 that comes out, but we should have blown them away, and maybe 2-0 doesn't really do it justice.
We talked about Trent there, and it was obviously very good to see him score the goal early. It seemed to do his a world of good. But if we look at the average positions, he wasn't tucked into the midfield, it seems. He didn't look like he's in the game anyway, and the data seems to back that up. But David, do you think that seems like a very conservative, almost traditional fullback role he played yesterday, wasn't it? Not too attacking, not too defending, just exactly where you want the fullback, somewhere in between.
Yeah, much closer to it. And I think, when we talk about how comfortable they look, he looked much more comfortable, but he's doing the job that he's been asked to do the last few years, rather than this kind of drift into the middle and see what you can make happen kind of thing that he's been doing all season. And he's looked uncomfortable, and he's constantly out of position, right? So, I hope that continues. I think maybe we're putting a little bit too much on him to create going forward, and just let him create how he's always created. I mean, he's led the league in assists, the last couple of years. So if it ain't broke, in terms of that part, just let him go on doing what he does and overlapping with Salah. And he's dangerous from a wide area. He's still dangerous from a dead ball in a corner. So maybe take some of this pressure off him that he's been feeling to be so active in the middle. I thought last night he was right where he needed to be the whole game.
Jamie, given the criticism that Southgate got for his remarks about Trent or his choice of fullback, that seems almost like Klopp was trying to help Southgate to see how Trent could function. Almost, wasn't it? It was almost like a favour to Trent, and playing him like an England fullback rather than the way we expect him to be, high into the attack. It's almost like doing him a favour again, isn't it?
Right. Well, I first of all, I don't think Klopp needs to do Southgate any favours, and he'd say that himself. He said no matter who he's managing, he would start Trent. And I think it's becoming a running joke now, the fact that we as Liverpool supporters have to defend Trent. It's almost like a full-time job where we're having to defend Trent against our own fans. He has been getting a lot of criticism from everyone. Ferdinand, all these ex-players, even Klopp's having to defend him. And I think, like David rightly said, he is under a lot of pressure. Look, he's under a lot of pressure anyway. And Trent came out and said so in the post-match. It's very hard for a footballer who's only 23, let's remind ourselves, to stay off social media. Like he said, what do you want from me? Do you want me to, go to training, come straight back home, stay off the phone, go to the game, come straight back home? Of course he's going to be affected by it. And he wants to stay as positive as possible. I just think I think it's laughable now that and I'm getting drawn into it on social media as well, having to defend him against our own fans. And I think it's got to be a lot for the kid. 23, he's already won the Champions League, he's won the Premier League. Like David said, he's leading the league in assists. He's going above and beyond. He's reinvented the right back position. He's we're talking about a bunch of, and I read this tweet, we're talking about a bunch of Hodgsons complaining about Roberto Carlos. Do you know what I mean? And that boils it down for me. Like, he is phenomenal, and he's ours. He's the Scouser on our team, and he's fantastic. And I think, you know, in a couple of weeks' time, you know, everybody's just going to be laughing, because whether he goes to the World Cup or not, I couldn't care less. And I make no bones about it. I'm no England fan, but if he does go, I will absolutely support him. And I love to watch the England team when there's a couple of Liverpool fans, or when a couple of Liverpool players on there. Like, wasn't it the England-Germany game where they won 5-1? All Liverpool players scored the goals. Heskey, Gerrard, even Hamann got the one for Germany. So, you know, like, I'm not above watching England play football, especially if there's a couple of Liverpool players on the squad. So I do want them to do well, but I don't think Southgate needs any favours. I think now with Reece James doing well, you know, they're gifted at right back. But I think Trent played really well. And, you know, again, let's remind ourselves, it was Rangers, and they had 5 at the back, and they weren't really the most attacking threat, and they have no pace up front. But I'm sick to the back teeth of having to defend Trent. Especially against our own fans. I think that's a joke.
I don't care what it says. I am above watching England. So,
and before I ask you this question, I just want to remind Jamie that the 5-1, as it was from a Liverpool perspective, was overshadowed by the fantastic Ireland 1, Holland 0 game a few hours before.
Matty Holland.
Was Matty Holland? Jason Macka here, my friend.
It was that. That's right.
David,
we had a couple of 1-0s against Holland, though, didn't we? And Matty Holland was one.
Yeah, he was one. The country he was named from. David, do you think, because we've seen Trent kind of improving in maybe the last few games, do you think he has missed having Robbo on the opposite side at full tilt? You know, kind of stop start, a little bit injured, tired, whatever was going on with him. And now that Tsimikas he's growing into that role as the Liverpool left back, it's almost rebalancing the side so that all the pressure isn't on Trent to be the creative force. Do you think that balance is helping him to, you know, get a bit more space and time and a bit of breathing room to be as good as he can be?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think Tsimikas is fairly creative. Oh, and always kind of has been, but it's a little bit slightly different way. And there's one thing that I don't see him doing as often as Robbo does. And we've all loved that cross field 70-yard ball that Trent will ping and find Robbo on the other sideline, right? I don't see that happen much with Tsimikas. And I think maybe that part, and I know it sounds like some Hollywood thing, but when someone does that to you when you're playing against them, the whole team turns around and goes like, oh, because we got to go run over there now, you know? And it just deflates you and it puts you on the back foot. And it's just those little moments sometimes can shift the momentum of a game or kind of change the way that one side feels it's going. So, yeah, to some extent, I think he's missed Robbo, but I also think, you know, the team kind of getting more comfortable with Tsimikas. And I mean, everybody, not just Trent, you know, Virgil and Thiago, who are both on that side with him, are getting more and more comfortable with him. And it's just one thing you can say about Tsimikas. He brings plenty of intensity. So I think the trust is growing pretty quickly. And I don't doubt that we'll get some better creativity down that left-hand side as him and Diaz also kind of figure it out. Because, you know, we had Robbo and Mane for how long? And that left side was so strong. We could go up and down that left side as much as we wanted to because those two knew each other so well. Diaz and Tsimikas, this is their first year playing together. We're going to have to be a little patient with it and that side's not going to bring as much creativity to the mix as Mo Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold. So it's natural that we want to push the ball down the right-hand side, right? So we'll see. I mean, but I think it's definitely getting better. And confidence builder.
Jamie, Michael says the fact that we look so good speaks to being against Rangers, and the fact that it ended 2-0 speaks to the funk that we are still in somehow. I don't agree with that. I think you're right that McGregor just played the game of his life. We did help him a tiny bit, but he really was fantastic for such an old goalkeeper to be up against Liverpool, an attack like that was on fire. But how bad were Rangers, or were they actually okay, but we just made them look a lot worse than they were?
Until they started making changes late second half. It's late second half, they started introducing a bit of pace. They have lost a few good players. Your man went to Ajax, what's his name, Basse? Or, he's a strong player, and they lost him. But they've no pace up front. I think yes. Look, we lacked a certain cutting edge. We could have been a bit more clinical in open play. Certainly, Jota had a good chance that was saved. He did make some great saves, McGregor, but some of them were right. You would expect him to save them. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think, considering both our goals came from the dead ball, that helped us out a lot, because even though we were very fluid and it looked very good with the movement and the interplay up front, something was lacking. So I'd hesitate to say funk. And I know, look, the word crisis has been bandied around a whole lot
By
this
me.
past couple of you and other social media and media puppets. No, I think a bit of a funk. Yeah. Up front, we could have been more clinical, but towards the latter part of the second half, Rangers did try and do something. So, Michael's already looking ahead to Ibrox, and I think we should be heading there with confidence, despite the Arsenal game, the result of the Arsenal game, which I'm sure we'll get on to. But I think we can definitely head to the Ibrox with confidence that we should be beating them, even at home, and hope to be a bit more clinical in front of goal.
David, Darren says Nunes got in the spaces, which bodes well for us as the goals will come. In terms of what Jamie was just saying there, about lacking the clinical edge, maybe. Do you think, let's say, just from the perspective of Salah, who has been used to almost telepathically playing with Firmino and Mane for so many years, do you think it's a case of literally it's 4 new players that have to learn what to do with each other? When it comes, it's going to be great. Or, Nunes concerned about his lack of goals in his own words. Do you think maybe we've got the wrong options in that came in for the way we want to play?
No, I just think chemistry takes time, right? Like you don't just fall in this place with people too much. I mean, we've all kicked the ball around at some point. And have you ever played with somebody that you just seem to know what they thought what they were going to do for some reason? And then it's like your best friend in the whole world, and the two of you can't link a pass. So it's like, just on-field chemistry is not the same thing as even personal chemistry. And it just takes time. Like you have to learn the way someone plays. And I think the comment that came up was right. Nunes is getting into a lot of spaces. And I think that's why there's something else that I'm encouraged about. And it's that Salah has no reservations about getting the guy the ball, right? Like he seems very open to just passing the ball. And he also seems to feel comfortable that he'll get it back as well. Because the next run that he makes, he's done this probably 4 or 5 times the other day, passes it, moves into a space, thinks he's going to get the ball back. And sometimes he does and sometimes he doesn't. But that level of comfort to at least try it, to not feel like he's got to be the guy, like this guy's capable of coming in and helping us. I think that is the first thing you need to start building chemistry. And the more they can tie Diaz into that, the more and Jota is really the piece to that, right? Because it's at times this year, it sort of felt like they've all been so far apart and on their own. It was lacking something to tie it all together. And I think, maybe yesterday and hopefully a little bit going forward, the 4 of them playing together will start to tie it all together.
Jamie, kind of focus a little bit on A, the chemistry, and B, Nunes. He had that one great play where he got to the goal line and then cut it back and nobody was there for it. And it was something that he tried 2 or 3 times, I think, later on. As part of the chemistry, it seems to be an option he goes for. Instead of trying to hold the ball at the end line and then turn it, he wants to cut it back in. Do you think that's something that the other attackers are going to see as, one of his habits, and then maybe start taking advantage of that? Or was it completely off the cuff and it's not going to happen again, and we're going to be stuck trying to find that chemistry?
I think you make a great point with that, Macka. I think what I'd like to see the script flipped on that. I'd like him to be in the middle and our wingers doing the job that he's doing. And it does speak to the chemistry and the fact that it's still new. And I do want to give Daz O'Connor a shout out. He's one of the guys who runs the Atlanta podcast. And I was listening to his podcast the other night, and his mate Glenn said that something I haven't really thought about, which is Darwin's only started 3 games. So, and that's no fault of his own. Well, actually it is. He got the red card. But also Bobby's been on form too. He's our leading goal scorer this season. So nothing's given. The price tag, you can't take it for granted. Like, you're not just going to waltz straight into the team, and he does need to build on that chemistry, but he also needs to get minutes from the start. So it's kind of a difficult. He's in a rock and a hard place right now. So where he needs minutes and he needs to be starting and he needs to be producing that chemistry in game in the 90 minutes, because there's only so much you can work on in training. It's that match fitness and knowing your team mates and what they're going to do. But I definitely would like to see, because I think he's got all the attributes of a great striker. Like he can take the ball down. Austin, not Atlanta. Sorry, Daz. It's the ATX. I'm not great with American abbreviations, Daz. All right, mate. But yeah, Daz is a good lad. Definitely give his podcast a listen to. But I would say he can bring the ball down, and he can do that good work on the wide and cut it back. And I know that one you're talking about where he's trying to feed Salah, and Salah's just too far behind. And I would like to see him be in and around the penalty spot for that type of maneuver, and let somebody like Diaz or Salah cut it back to him. So time will tell, and like David's saying, it will take time for them to gel and build that chemistry. So hopefully, not to say that Bobby's not doing great, but hopefully there's a way to incorporate all 4 of those players. And maybe it's Jota that comes out and Bobby comes in, and you'll see those 4 starting against Arsenal and teams like that.
David, do you think, as Jamie said, getting Núñez into that 9 spot rather than at the end of the goal line, do you think that'll be part of Darwin's evolution?
No,
that's not the question I was going to ask.
I nearly spat my drink all over my laptop.
The question I was going to ask is, Jamie made a good point that he would rather have Darwin at the top of the penalty spot and Salah and Diaz cutting back, but that's not really their game, is it? It's not. If they're in that position, they're always trying to cut back in onto their strong foot to take the shots. Do you think it's maybe so the coaching staff can look at and say, maybe there's an option B if you get your head up and look for it?
Yeah, I think that they bought him. If you look at some of his Benfica highlights, right? They bought him because they felt like he could achieve a lot of movement and a lot of the fluidity that they want to have out of the front 3, right? And I think that part of that is sometimes it's Salah feeding him and he's on the penalty spot, and sometimes it's Núñez coming down the flank and cutting in from the box and finding Salah on the other side of the box or whatever. Like that it kind of just flows. That's what I think that they thought they were going to buy, and I think that's why you see Mo trying to work off him so much. I don't think Mo Salah took this new contract, and I don't think they gave him all that money to turn him into a traditional winger. He's been scoring all these goals, and it's a question of how do we ensure that he continues to produce at this rate. And he's going to need players that can do a bunch of different things around him. And I think they bought Núñez thinking that that's what they could turn him into. So I don't know how it'll be there, but it'll all be everybody on the 9 spot at some point.
Just a quick final question on the Rangers game and Nunes and all that. Just very briefly, do you think maybe Nunes is just trying too hard? Is it the Ian Rush case all over again? And Paisley, not Shankly, Mr. Jamie, saying, just stick it in the back of the net and we'll talk about the options later. Is it just a lot of overthinking from the lad?
That's it. I think, and that'll happen. He's under a whole lot of pressure, mainly by himself. He wants to do well, and he realizes the club he's at, and he realizes that, just up the M62, there's a guy banging in goals for fun, and I hate the fact that comparison's getting drawn. And again, that's no fault of his own either. I think I have realistic expectations for him. He is a work in progress, and adjusting to the Premier League is always going to be that little bit harder. So, yeah, I mean, definitely trying too hard, and like we said a couple of podcasts ago, football is often easily overcomplicated. If you boil things down to the simplistic approach, you just put it in the corners. If he can get to a point where it becomes second nature, because strikers have that about them, that innate ability to be a hunter, to be, when that ball comes in, everything freezes, everything slows down, goes to slow motion, and you just drill it into the bottom corner and wheel off celebrating before it even hits the back of the net. I do think he'll get there. It's just getting that first goal, getting that out from under his feet, and then it'll all become second nature.
David, just very quickly, option A or option B, do you think the Haaland-Nunes comparison is because, they both came from their respective leagues as goal machines, or do you think it's just because they both have ponytails?
Both.
Okay, moving on. We have a game coming up this weekend. It's not your average game. It's the Arsenal-Liverpool game. I don't know whether we would ever consider it one of our rivalries in the way we would consider United, Everton, and then City to an extent the last few years. But an Arsenal-Liverpool game is usually a fantastic game, one way or the other, and certainly high scoring. David, what kind of a lineup do you expect this weekend?
I think he'll probably go 4-3-3. It'll be Hendo, Thiago, and Fabinho in the middle. And the back line kind of picks itself, right? And then up top, it's probably Nunez that makes way. And he goes Jota, Firmino, or Jota, Salah, and Diaz, actually. Sorry. But that's kind of what I'm expecting. I think that they also probably feel that that formation and that game plan has worked better against teams that come at us, right? Not teams that just sit back and counter. And they'll believe that Arsenal's going to, play their football and try to play their way and come at us and be dangerous the way that they are to every other team. So I'm expecting it to kind of go the way of what you would have expected this game to look like at the beginning of the season.
Jamie, same for you. Like, what kind of lineup do you expect? And also, what do we do up front? Do we stick with Nunez and Jota? Do we go Nunez, Firmino, or do we just go Bobby up front?
So my expectations are we go, like David said, at the back it picks itself. Midfield, we kind of got to go with our best bet. I think David's probably right. We'd probably stick with a 4-3-3. I personally would start Nunez in the middle. I kind of want that big figure, that imposing, attacking, always on the last line, to be on their centre backs, because their centre backs are flying high right now. They're doing really well. And kind of like what we were saying, there's no time like the present for Nunez to be getting more minutes, starting more. And even though Bobby's in a rich vein of form, I think I would look to be bringing somebody like Bobby off the bench if things aren't going our way. The 5 subs has really changed our approach, or can do from the start. So, if things aren't going well, we can bring on Jota, we can bring on Bobby. But for me, I'd start Diaz, Nunez, and Salah.
David, if we look at the table right now, obviously there's several places between us and Arsenal, and 11 points. But if you look at the goals for and against, we're not actually that far from each other. It's one goal in the difference for the goals against and 2 goals in the difference in the goals scored. What's different is that we have drawn 4 and they've drawn 0 games. On paper, it looks like they're a gulf ahead of us, but really it should be a very tight game, shouldn't it?
I mean, it should. A lot of that kind of goals, our goal differential is clouded by the 9-0, but I think it should be a good competitive game. I don't think we'll keep a clean sheet, so I'm expecting us to have to go there and play some pretty open style football and get. If we want a result, I think we need 3 goals. I'll be honest with you, because they're coming in and kind of there's some pep in their step. They're feeling very confident. They've just won the North London Derby and won it convincingly, so they'll feel like what their manager's been drilling into them is working, that they're in a rich vein of form, and they are. Now, I still think at some point this year that they'll struggle and their title hope will fade away. But where they are right now at this moment, if they were to beat us, then this would be a massive result for them, which, they'll all have on their minds coming in. So it's definitely going to be an interesting game. I think for us, it's a must get something. You've got to come out of this game with something. So there's a lot of pressure on our side as well.
Jamie, they are flying high right now. They're talking about themselves as league title contenders, even though it probably looks like City will run away with it in the end if they don't get any injuries during the World Cup, etc. But at some point, always, Arsenal will Arsenal the whole thing up. That is what they do. When do you think we're going to be the game where it starts, or is it going to be a proper challenge for us?
I'd love to think so, Macka. I really would. Because you're absolutely right. Arsenal will do Arsenal things. I think it'll probably be. Usually it was after Christmas, wasn't it? I think this season's the anomaly with the World Cup just around the corner, which is still hard to believe. The words coming out of my mouth, the World Cup is right around the corner. It's mental, isn't it? It's just doesn't sit well with me. It's kind of like watching Arsenal at the top of the table. I don't enjoy it. I've got a few Arsenal mates and haven't heard from them in a while, and all of a sudden they're perking up at the start of the season, and my response is, let's see where you are in May. I don't think we're going to have to wait till May until the inevitable Arsenal decline to 4th place happens. Hopefully it happens just after the World Cup, but I do think, regardless if we get the win or if we get the draw, I like David's approach. We must get something out of this game, and he's absolutely right. I think they're not title contenders because we all know it takes a lot to rival City the whole season long, and Arsenal just haven't got that in their tank. I know they've done superbly well. I mean, made great signings. Jesus is rekindled something from deep within his soul and become a whole new player. And that's kind of echoed throughout their team. They're doing, I mean, really, they are doing great, but it can't last forever. So let's hope we start by taking 3 points off them, and maybe David's wrong. Must get something turns into must get a win, and we'll be fortunate enough to take all 3 points.
David, do you think, Jamie says, at some point, it has to turn for them because it usually does. Do you think that point will come when the Arsenal players suddenly realise that their manager is actually made of Lego?
Maybe it was one of them tries to touch his hair, and that's the end of his contract.
That's it. You're out.
But on a serious note, I mean, the Arsenal Amazon Prime documentary shows them doing some stuff that not to bash him, but if Brendan Rodgers had done it, there would have been David Brent memes all over the internet about it. But because it's Michael Arteta, Michael Artson, it's somehow now deemed acceptable. Do you think maybe he's just a little bit too gimmicky of a coach to sustain this success that they have right now? Or do you think he might actually be the real deal?
He could be. I think he's still a ways away from it. When you're, trying things like that, I think it's a symptom of a young manager, right? Like somebody that's just like, well, let me just try different things. And because you don't have experience in those moments of how to kind of preach the things that you want, you try gimmicky stuff. And he's just young. We don't know yet. Yeah, I think he's still got a long road ahead. He could be a very good manager. I think he's done great work with that team. But we'll find out in the next 2 or 3 years if he's got it in him to push for a title for real. Because like you said, like Jamie noted, when you're up against a machine, your margin for error is so small that we know, right? It's like we've lost the league on 97 and 92 points, and they're suffocating.
It's a better pill to swallow. Better pill to swallow, and
they are suffocating. Like they just don't drop points, and now they've got this goal machine that looks like he might score 70 goals this season. And you're just like, what do I do with this? And so can they maintain this for the whole season? Based on what we've seen in them the last 5 years, no. And at some point, this is going to crumble. But like Jamie said, hopefully it's this weekend.
Jamie,
in the league. I'm not even sure when we last won at the Emirates in the league. We usually draw.
That's a great question.
We won there in the League Cup last year. I know that.
All I remember is we do have draws and a lot of high scoring draws, but recently it seems to have bounced between one team and the other, winning by quite a few goals. My question now for Jamie is, we make a joke about Mikel Arteta being made of Lego and whether he's not the real deal, but who is the real deal is Gabriel Jesus. How do you think we handle him this weekend?
Let him know you're there early. let him know you're there early. Let Verge introduce him to, a shy elbow or, a kick on the shin or
go stand on his foot.
Stand on his foot's a good one. He's got no hair to pull. So maybe yank on that wee mustache he's got, that wee. I don't know. I do know that he can be, his feathers can be ruffled by a bit of old-fashioned, shall we say, defending. I think you can get underneath his skin. I think he does have the tendency, or at least he did at City, to complain when things aren't going his way. So if you can upset him early, before he has the chance to maybe make you look foolish, I think that some may frown upon that tactic, but I think you have to be smarter than the average bear in the Premier League. So maybe knowing your opponent in this scenario is a good way to go, and maybe if Virgil can, like David said, just stand on him, just brickhouse him for a minute, and just hope that Sunday's not his day,
David,
Sunday is, after all, a day of rest, It
is a day of rest. And speaking of that, do you think tactically what our plan maybe should be would be to, pack up the middle of the ball wide and have them send the ball in? Because as we all know, Jesus doesn't like crosses.
But is BJ writing your lines again, Macka? What's going on
here? Speaking of BJ, we won the last 2 league matches.
There you go.
There you go. On a serious note, though, I think Jamie said earlier that maybe it's going to have to be an open game. It's going to be you attack, we attack, you attack, we attack. David, do you think? I was David. So, do you think we have the firepower functioning right now to actually win that kind of a game, or do we have to be tactically smarter?
Well, I think we're going to have to be tactically smart for sure. But do we have the firepower? Yeah, I think so. You look at Bobby's record against Arsenal. I mean, he's got a hat trick. He's got one more hat trick in the bag, so it's going to come against Arsenal. So, if we can get Salah firing, I know it was a penalty the other day, but it will have felt good for him to see the ball go in the back of the net. So, if we can get him off the mark, or, Diaz has been so good all season at just creating for everybody, including himself. So you can never put it past him. So we definitely have the firepower. And what I would like to see is maybe a corner kick not be a giant waste of time. Maybe Virgil gets up and pokes one in. Whatever it is, you are right, though. It's going to be an open game, and it kind of has to be. That doesn't mean we still can't be kind of tactical, but it's just going to be will be a tense affair, I think. I got my score prediction, but I'll wait for it.
Well, for both of you, very quickly, without thinking about it, who would you say is going to be the key player for us if we are to win this game this Sunday?
Diaz.
How so?
Because he's electric. I think if he can do what he has shown and take the game by the scruff of the neck and really drive at defenders, I think he can cause havoc, and that's kind of what he done against Rangers. Got brought down in the box. I think if he can keep that momentum going, I think he's a real bright spark and a real tough character to handle.
David, what about you? Who's your key player?
I'm going to have to go with Thiago, just because he seems to be the key player in the mix right now. The way he can tie everything together, he's got that kind of veteran sense, but incredible ability at the same time. When he's in the middle, we're just better. And I think that he'll make a huge difference in this game. His experience and also his ability to kind of help us control the game at times will be vital.
Okay, very quickly, Jamie, score prediction.
Jesus, not another draw. 4-3 Liverpool.
David?
I'm afraid I'm a little bit of a masochist. I think it's going to be 3-3.
I'm going to say 3-2. I'm not going to tell you which way it's going to go, though. Right. So before we end,
that already says it. By not saying it, that says it.
It's just so hard to call. Threshold questions for week. I've got two now. One of them is from Darren, and it's specifically for you, Jamie. Is there a part of Great Britain or Green Bay? I don't know what that GB means. It could be Green Bay.
Don't ask me, because I don't even know where bloody hell he lives.
Now the threshold question for the week is: who would you rather be? Would you rather be Roy Hodgson or Phil Babb's testicles that time he did a slide tackle into the goalpost?
I'll go Phil Babb's testicles, because in a world of Roy Hodgson's, we all need a bit of love, just like Phil Babb did.
Yeah.
David, who would you rather be?
Oh, definitely his testicles. I'm sure they healed, and they probably got lots of action during his career.
I think I'd go with, I'd rather be Phil Babb's testicles, because he would have played for Ireland as well, and he doesn't want that. Okay, so that's the show for tonight. Just remains to say thank you to Jamie and thank you to David for fantastic conversation. As always, everybody should make sure they like and subscribe down below. Join the Discord channel. We have little FIFA contests, and we have the Fantasy Premier League going if people want to get involved in that. And then keep an eye out for what we may do at the weekend. There may be watch-alongs, there may be pre-match, post-match analysis, or crying, depending on which way it goes in the game. But it's going to be a fantastic game. It's starting to become yet again a great time to be a Red, isn't it, lads?
It is indeed. Up the Reds.
Less stress, more success. That's what I say. I just came up with that now. So if anybody uses it, you owe me money. David, thank you very, very much. Jamie, thank you very much. Thank you for anybody who watched and contributed. We will see you all next Thursday. Same bat time, same bat. Slant it.